This is CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: the death toll from a Russian airstrike on a village in Ukraine's Kharkiv region has risen to at least 52 people. Our other headlines: Damascus strikes back at rebel-held areas in Syria as relatives mourn dozens of government soldiers killed by a drone strike in Homs. EU leaders discuss bringing new members into the bloc, with 8 more countries hoping to join. And why the beat is good for business. How Chinese folk music is helping companies dance to a new tune. The death toll from a Russian airstrike on a village in Ukraine's Kharkiv region has risen to at least 52 people, with rescuers still searching through the rubble for more bodies. The United Nations has deployed a team to Hroza to investigate what Kyiv has described as one of Moscow's deadliest attacks on civilians. The Kremlin reiterated on Friday that it does not strike civilian targets. A cafe and a shop were both hit in Thursday's attack, which happened as people gathered for a wake. A 3-day period of mourning has been announced in the wider Kharkiv region.
Now, what is clear is that the strike is one of the deadliest since the 24th of February 2022. But of course, it is far from being the only one. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, who saw for himself the horrific impact of such strikes, is profoundly shocked and condemns these killings. He's deployed a field team to the site to speak to survivors and gather more information. Before the Russian invasion, the village's population was about 300. It's not clear how many residents were still living there, but it's clear that with the high number of people killed, everybody in this small community has been affected.
Well, Ukraine says a 10-year-old boy and his grandmother have been killed after Russia launched more airstrikes on Kharkiv early on Friday. More than 20 others were injured, including an 11-month-old baby in the missile strike, which destroyed much of a residential building. The strikes also damaged grain and port infrastructure in the Odessa region. Well, Russia's parliament looks to be considering whether to revoke the ratification of a treaty banning nuclear testing. This comes after President Putin made comments on Thursday signaling the country's possible return to nuclear weapons testing. Let's talk to our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova, watching events for us in Moscow. Dasha, could Russia be withdrawing from this nuclear treaty?
Well, we understand that Russia may be de-ratifying the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty that is expected to bring Moscow on par with the United States. To remind you, both Moscow and Washington have signed on this treaty, but Moscow has ratified it and the US has not. So we understand at the moment the Russian lawmakers could be considering the issue of de-ratification very shortly. And this is obviously coming after the Russian president has signaled that there is this imbalance. The change in the global situation is now prompting the Russian officials to reconsider the current situation of this treaty. At the same time, the Kremlin has signaled that it doesn't mean that Moscow is willing to get back to the testing of the nuclear weapons. It just simply wants to be on par with the US when it comes to the CTBT.
President Putin has some new suggestions about the cause of that plane crash that killed the Wagner chief Yevgeny Prigozhin.
That's right. Speaking to the participants of the Valdai Forum on Thursday, the Russian president said that he was briefly reported by the head of the Russian Investigative Committee, Alexander Bastrykin, who has given him some latest information regarding the investigation into what has caused the plane that was carrying Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin to crash. Now, we understand from the words of the Russian president that indeed there was no external outside impact fired against that plane. That is obviously countering the earlier suggestion that the plane could have been shot down by some sort of a missile or anything else. The Russian president has said that what has been discovered in the bodies of the victims of this plane crash was the elements, the fragments of a hand grenade. So the understanding is that it was blown from the inside. But again, we're yet to hear for the final conclusion that the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, says clearly that the final results of the investigation are yet to be provided. They are yet to be outlined to the Russian public. In the meantime, the Russian president has expressed his personal opinion, saying that there was no expertise when it comes to the possible presence of drugs or alcohol in the bodies of the victims on that plane, and that expertise should have been performed in his personal opinion. He reminded that after the searches at the Wagner board's residence, as well as at the premises where the Wagner Group has been located, they have found some cocaine there, they have found some cash, and that's why we understand that this investigation is yet to announce the final conclusions, but that's why the Russian president has said that in his opinion that expertise should also have taken place.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Armenia is struggling to cope with an influx of more than 100,000 people who fled Nagorno-Karabakh. Nearly all ethnic Armenians have left the territory after Azerbaijan forces launched a sudden offensive. Armenia has a population of just 3 million people, and the new arrivals face a severe lack of accommodation. Our correspondent Stephanie Fried reports.
Quiet contemplation, roughhousing in the corridors. More contemplation. It passes the time when life's daily pattern has been dramatically interrupted. Of the more than 100,000 Nagorno-Karabakh refugees who fled into Armenia last month, 38 are housed here on the grounds of this observatory, built in 1946 when the Soviet Union governed this country. It's located in a remote area 45 minutes outside Armenia's capital, Yerevan.
The biggest challenge for the people living here, food. There's not enough, and they're having trouble procuring it for the refugees.
They rely on food donations from nearby villagers and observatory scientists. Half of the refugees housed at the observatory have been here before. They fled war in Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020, then returned home when a ceasefire was implemented. They're not counting on a repeat of that scenario this time.
I have so many thoughts about home, and to tell the truth, we dream about our village. But it took them minutes to enter our village after we left. How do you return after all that?
Observatory officials aren't counting on their return to Nagorno-Karabakh either. Talk is circulating here of renovating the dorms into permanent housing for the refugees. Bella, her husband, 3 children, and most of the refugees here aren't happy about that prospect. But they're resigned to the current reality. Stephanie Fried, CGTN, Burhan, Armenia.
Shelling in rebel-held northern Syria has intensified as Syrian government forces respond to a drone attack at a military graduation ceremony which killed 89 people. Our correspondent Zara Aldazi is following the story for us. Zara, what do we know about these reprisal attacks in northern Syria?
Since this morning, the Syrian army has intensified its attack over the rebel-held areas, including several areas like Benish, and Sermin, and the city of Ariha, and the city of Idlib, which is being attacked for the first time since 2017, when the Sochi agreement with reach. The Syrian army is saying that he is targeting the strongholds of the Islamic Turkestan Party and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, including the immigrants brigade there. Till the moment, according to the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights, 3 people were killed and some others were injured during these bombardments. Over 500 shells were targeting this area. We have to refer that the Syrian army yesterday, the Ministry of Defense, issued a statement and said that this drone, which attacked a graduation ceremony of officers in the military academy, belongs to a group which is related to international forces, and it is backed to them, and it vowed to respond in a harsh way to such attack. But till the moment, there is no statement that clarifies the specific group or that which the drone belongs to.
Meanwhile, the funerals are underway for those people killed at that military academy on Thursday.
Yes, several funerals took place today in the city of Homs, from Homs military hospital, and the military hospital also in the near city of Hama, and from the military hospital of Latakia. Here we are talking about 89 people were killed during the attack yesterday, and around 277 others were wounded, according to the Ministry of Health. Until the moment, there is no final death toll for this accident.
Zahra Al-Dawzi, thank you very much. Turkey has confirmed ownership of a drone shot down in Syria by the United States on Thursday. The Pentagon spokesperson says the drone came within 500 meters of US troops and was deemed a threat. It's the first time Washington has brought down an aircraft of its NATO ally. It was shot down in part of Syria controlled by the YPG, the Syrian wing of the PKK. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier is in Washington to mark German-American Day. Steinmeier is meeting US President Joe Biden at the White House, where the pair are expected to discuss the conflict in Ukraine. The Republican-dominated Congress has passed an interim budget that does not include further military aid to Kyiv. Former US President Donald Trump is seeking to dismiss election interference charges against him, saying that he's immune from prosecution. Trump's lawyers say his attempts to cast doubt on the 2020 results fell within his duties as president. Meanwhile, his legal team also urged a New York judge to dismiss charges against him tied to hush money payments to a porn star. They say the accusations are politically motivated and legally flawed. It's being seen as a significant political sea change. Britain's main opposition party, Labour, is celebrating a big win in Scotland. It's taken back a key seat from the Scottish National Party, which campaigns for independence from the UK. Labour has been trying to win back support in Scotland after years of almost total SNP dominance. Some analysts are interpreting the scale of this victory as evidence that the party could be on track for a return to power in UK-wide government next year. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, you might be getting into bed with more than you bargained for. How Paris is battling bedbugs.
This week on Razor, how plant life may have moved from water to land. And revolutionizing drug development using AI.
We created a pipeline that pretty much covered all the steps of pharmaceutical R&D, but managed to automate everything that could have been automatable, and enter phase 2 human clinical trials now with an AI-designed therapeutic.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. The death toll from a Russian airstrike on a village in Ukraine's Kharkiv region has risen to at least 52 people. Our other headlines: Damascus strikes back at rebel-held areas in Syria as relatives mourn dozens of government soldiers killed by a drone strike in Homs. European Union leaders meeting in Spain will discuss how the 27-country bloc can evolve to take in new members. 8 countries already have EU candidate status, including Albania, Serbia, Moldova and Ukraine. However, they have to meet specific requirements, and accession can take years. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Ken Brown in Madrid. Ken, several countries hoping to join. How much agreement is there among the current EU members on who should be admitted?
Well, the easy answer to that is not much agreement at all. We've seen a lot of disagreement in Granada today. Despite that, we heard the words, the EU needs to prepare for enlargement. That was what the European Council President Charles Michel said. Now, these are extremely difficult discussions. They're only really beginning on the accession of potentially 10 countries, including the Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz are behind this expansion, but there is resistance from certain quarters, inviting a debt-ridden Ukraine into the Union, for example, and 9 other nations could come with a cost of up to $268 billion, according to the Financial Times. Now, it's not a quick process either. Both Serbia and Albania complaining that they've been on the EU's doorstep for 10 years. Michel said that candidate countries know what they need to do in terms of reform. Now, elsewhere, we heard from the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz today. He talked about the more practical issues of creating what would be the largest parliament in the world. He talked about how certain founding members might have to give up their rights to powerful jobs, for example. We also heard from Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte. He talked about a responsible expansion that could be done with lasting reforms in areas like the rule of law in candidate countries, for example. So today was really just the beginning of what are set to be fraught discussions and negotiations on this EU expansions, with battle lines being drawn for future negotiations, as we're still waiting for this summit to end and any real concrete measures to emerge from it.
One of the other big challenges is migration, which has also been discussed today. What's come out of that?
Well, once again, we're still really waiting for any resolution, for any statement, for any declaration. We've already seen that Hungary and Poland from very on in the day said that they were going to block any declaration. They were extremely angry when on Wednesday, due to a democratic process, a majority voted for a new pact on migration that has certain laws that Prime Minister Viktor Orban, for example, was dead against. Things like the facilitation of moving migrants between different countries, fines per migrant, per refugee, that was not accepted by different countries. Orban today had some extremely strong words. He said that Poland and Hungary had been legally raped by Brussels. Now, he is famous for that type of language. Of course, he gets a lot of political capital from bashing the EU when he can. On Wednesday, a preliminary deal was reached between EU ambassadors for this migration pact, also tightening up certain laws and giving more scope for EU countries to detain and repatriate illegal migrants. Europe is in the midst of a migration crisis, of course, with over 200,000 people arriving just this year. It's also a humanitarian crisis. Over 2,700 people have lost their lives in dangerous Mediterranean crossings. So once again, we're at a bit of an impasse on that issue. No declaration from Grenada. We're still waiting and hoping to bring you more news in the next hour, Jamie.
Ken, thank you for that. Our correspondent Ken Brown in Madrid. Now, in the city of romance, when you climb into bed, you might not be alone. Paris is battling an infestation of bed bugs. It's so bad that the government has called an emergency meeting of ministers. Our correspondent Ross Cullen has been investigating at a distance.
Bed bugs are back in Paris. After being eradicated in the 1950s, the small, blood-eating insects are causing concern in the capital. There have been sightings of bed bugs on the metro, on intercity trains, in cinemas and at Charles de Gaulle Airport. The Transport Minister this week urged people not to panic, saying that travellers using trains and buses were not in danger.
I just caught the bus and I didn't see any bed bugs. The bus was clean. I take the metro very often and it's clean. I've never had a problem. I look around and pay attention.
I'm not worried about bed bugs. It's a question of hygiene. I'm hygienic, but sadly on public transport you should not put fabric on the seats. In Portugal, Spain and other countries their metro seats are plastic, which you can wash and clean easily. So it's a question of hygiene.
Great city. You got to move around, not worry about bed bugs.
We have them in the United States.
Yes, plenty of them.
The little insects feed on human blood at night, and their bites can cause irritation or rashes, but they do not carry diseases. Their presence is also not linked to how clean a hotel or apartment may be.
The first reports of bedbug infestations are coming from the big hotels, the luxury places, the five-star hotels, where there are no hygiene problems, that's for sure. It's people who have travelled and brought back bedbugs and left them in the hotel. So you can do the same thing. You can be very clean, but still bring bedbugs home.
The problem is not confined to Paris. This school in France's second city of Marseille had to close for deep cleaning. While the medical side of the bedbug problem is not of major concern, what is worrying the city are the optics. With the Olympics coming here next summer, there is a lot at stake for France. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Paris.
The United Nations Children's Fund says more than 43 million children had to flee their homes between 2016 and 2021 due to weather-related disasters. UNICEF found that East Asia and the Pacific were the worst affected regions, with China and the Philippines having some of the highest numbers, mainly due to flooding and storms. The report also predicts nearly 96 million children will be displaced over the next 30 years due to river floods alone. Officials in northern India knew about the dangers of a glacial lake in the Himalayas years before this week's flooding disaster, which killed at least 40 people. Engineers were in the process of installing an early warning system when the lake burst its banks, sending icy water crashing through a dam and sweeping away homes. They say that if the system had been operational, more people would have had time to flee. Heavy rain and strong winds are expected to hit China's Guangdong province over the next 3 days. As Typhoon Konu approaches, at least one person was killed and hundreds injured in Taiwan earlier this week. Authorities are sending aid to Orchid Island, which has been badly hit. Global temperatures are likely to soar to record levels in the next 5 years. That's according to the World Meteorological Organization. Scientists believe that the El Niño weather pattern could have big impacts in the coming months. Our correspondent Hendrik Sybrandy reports.
It's been a very, very hot year, as many of us have experienced firsthand.
It's just unbearable. It's impossible to be out.
The UN Secretary General summed it up in July.
The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
2023 has also been a year of weather extremes.
Changes to rainfall patterns, so heavy rainfall in the summer as well as in the winter, because of climate change.
Now prepare for even more of that change.
And we're now seeing El Nino conditions being established in the Pacific.
Climate experts agree El Nino, a weather event characterized by warmer than average temperatures in the tropical Pacific Ocean, is gathering steam and could have a major impact on the globe in the months ahead.
Our model came out and produced a whopping anomaly.
Steve Yeager, a project scientist with the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research, says what he calls a super El Nino appears to be on the way.
The stronger the event is, the more havoc it wreaks on weather systems around the world.
El Ninos have been associated with deadly fires, drought, heat waves, floods, and mudslides in the past. NCAR used an experimental model to reach its findings, evaluating not just atmospheric conditions, but oceans, sea ice, and land over a 50-year period. Using huge amounts of data, scientists ran simulations that produced hindcasts, which very accurately predicted the strength of past El Ninos. They then decided to look forward.
We felt it was important to get our message out there that our system, even though it's new and fairly untested and we're just starting to kick the tires on it, is skillful enough that we're willing to put this out there.
His goal, in part, is to make the public more alert. Many scientists believe a strong El Nino combined with global warming could be a double whammy for the climate next year.
So we're anticipating that not only is 2023 going to be exceptionally warm and possibly a record warm year, but we anticipate that 2024 will be warmer still.
Yeager says El Ninos tend to live up to their reputation.
There's fascination with it, there's some dread associated with it, and so it makes for a fairly dramatic climate story whenever it happens.
NCAR plans to run a more conclusive simulation in November, and while he says his prediction is far from a guarantee,
I think we're in for something.
Hendrik Sabrandi, CGTN, Denver.
They say music is good for the soul, and that seems to be the case for residents of China's Chengdu province. The National Day holiday has brought daily folk and pop music performances and food markets for all tastes. Our correspondent Guo Tianqi reports.
Chengdu is the city with the most concert houses in China, and here in the most famous bistro commercial street, Yulin, is where many singers made their debut. After years of development, locals of all ages have developed their habit of listening to folk music.
This is our third time here, and I love pop music. Our choir has performed pop music on stage too. A lot of old friends also wanted to come.
Basically, I'm lazy, so I don't want to, go very far. So this is my neighborhood. Every once in a while, I know there's a market, then I'll come here and drink coffee with my friend. And he is making this coffee something, for a long time, and he wants to make it into a business. So I came here supporting him.
If we wander around the street, you can see the nightlife was great. So many people enjoy the food, hot pot dishes, enjoy the beer. Look around, so many young people, they are starting their business. That's great.
This folk music season continues for 2 months, all the way until November. And this is the most comfortable season here in Chengdu. Accompanied by the live music, the local businesses have gained new opportunities.
Many young people's businesses started from small stalls like this, finding their own way to make a profit with lower cost.
Our camper is also a mobile stall, and the flow of people here is good. But the weather is getting cooler in recent days, so the lemon tea business is not very good. So we plan to sell some hot food in the coming days.
The beauty of folk music is that it can be enjoyed and appreciated by all, make us reflect and realize that ordinary life is also worth celebrating. Guo Tianqi, CGTN, Chengdu, Sichuan Province.
And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.